sailed that day for a 3-hour tour. A 3-hour tour. The weather started getting rough. The tiny ship was tossed. If not for the courage of the fearless crew, the minnow would be lost. The minnow would be lost. The ship's aground on the shore of this uncharted desert isle.
A 3-hour cruise, 3-hour cruise. Well, welcome back to Travels with Carl, my friends. Look, I still got the jacket. Oh, check it out. Brotherhood of the Sea. Seafarers International Union. That's right. We was a union ship and everything. Of course, guess who was the shop steward? Yep, right here. I was a cabin attendant. Much as my friends from the Sheraton liked to tease me before I left, called me cabin boy, CB. I made the mistake of telling them what I was going to do on the ship, and they just wouldn't let it go until the day I left. That's okay, man. They love me. So let me tell you all about it. So there I am. I'm in Honolulu. I'm working at the Sheraton Juan, a surf rider. Juan, who was a bellman for 38 years, retired. I am not kidding. Juan retired. And so that made an opening in the bell department, and I left valet and moved on up. So I started as a messenger just because the bell captain couldn't stand the idea that I was going to just slide right into a bell job that easy. He was a real dick. I'm sorry. I just got to get that out. He was really one of the least pleasant people I've ever worked with. But my buddy Tim Clark, he and I remain friends to this day. And excuse me, man. I forgot to mention today's episode of Travels with Carl is brought to you by Lipton. I'm drinking the peach iced tea today. That's a tasty beverage. Lipton. So Juan retired. I moved into the bell department and moved up to, eventually I became a bellman. A messenger is kind of like a bellman, only you don't do so much luggage as deliveries, which you can still make really good money because it was a union job, and I got paid for every delivery I made. So I got this job offer for the MS Patriot, the first time in maritime history that a cruise ship under another flag, meaning registered in another country, was reflagged. At the time, it was with an American flag. First time in maritime history. So there had been the Constitution and the Independence, which cruised Hawaii. They had to scuttle those ships. They were just worn out. So they buy this ship from Holland America Lines for $114 million. Decide they're going to renovate it, and it's going to do the same thing the Independence and the Constitution did, because there's a very old law called the Jones Act, and it makes it illegal to be carrying passengers and go from start the itinerary on one U.S. port and end on another U.S. port. Normally, if you're not U.S. flagged, you have to touch another country and then come back. So the benefit, besides the fact that we could be have a union crew, and it would be a Coast Guard regulated ship, which meant, if your ship is certified by the Coast Guard, most all cruise ships are under what's called SOLAS, which stands for the Safety of Life at Sea. But if your ship and your crew are Coast Guard certified, that's a much higher level of competency. So the very first thing I had to do was go get my Merchant Marines license, and it's called a Z card if you're in the business. It's called a Z card, and that allows you to work on all kinds of ships, from container ships to cruise ships, anywhere in the world. But the next thing I had to do was I had to fly to Piney Point, Maryland, and all of the oncoming crew was going to meet down there and get certified to work on this ship. So you had to understand and know how watertight doors operated, and smoke doors, and you had to understand all kinds of life raft and life preservers and lifeboats. You had to understand how to deploy and operate those, and so that was really fun. So they flew me to Maryland. I went to school there, and then when we all graduated, they flew us up. The ship at this point had already been put into dry dock, and it was on the Columbia River in a floating dry dock. So we all flew up to Portland and went to the ship. And I don't know if you know what a floating dry dock is or not, but it's like imagine if you had a bathtub and the back door could swing open, okay? So this thing's underwater, the back door is open, it drive the cruise ship into the floating dry dock. Now there's still water in there, okay? The ship's just floating on its own. It just happens to be inside of a three-dimensional cube or rectangle that the back is open, right? So then they close the back door behind it. They put divers inside there, and they put big blocks of wood underneath the ship to get ready to support it, okay? Because what's going to happen next is they're going to start. Now the door is closed, so you've got a watertight rectangle in the water. It's submerged underwater with a cruise ship parked inside of it, just floating on its own at this point, right? They're going to start pumping the water out of that thing. And because it's displacing water, it's like a ship all of its own, right? It starts rising up, and it's about to connect with the pieces of wood that I just mentioned that they're putting underneath the ship. So these pieces of wood are all cut so that, it can support something shaped like this, right? So the divers go down in there and they put all these pieces of wood in, and then they keep pumping water out, and pretty soon the ship is sitting on these blocks of wood inside this now empty bathtub that's floating there, and it's moored to the dock so that it's not going to go anywhere. But the ship is just precariously perched on these blocks of wood inside this now empty bathtub. That's how a floating dry dock works. Fucking ingenious, man. And there's really no danger of the thing tipping over because it's so bottom heavy, because all ships have some kind of a keel, whether they have a big keel like a sailboat or they just have a big thing of lead or iron underneath the boats. They're always bottom heavy, right? Or hopefully. So anyway, I meet the crew up there, or I meet the ship up there, and there's a bunch of laborers working on the ship already, and they assign us cabins to sleep in and everything. So we're going to move right into the ship, just like we're going to start living on it, right? Before it's even in the water. And they were going to put a bow thruster in it. It's a bow thruster. If you have a ship, like say this is the front of the ship, they cut a hole in the ship right here, goes all the way through it. Like you could look right through it, like a big hole in the front of the ship. And they put a propeller in there that turns this way. So it looks like the rotor on a helicopter, on the blade on the back end of a helicopter. It looks kind of like that. It's watertight now. It's sealed all the way around, but you have this big fan-shaped propeller inside there that can spin at tremendous speed, and it can either push water this way or it can push water that way. So if you have a big long ship, right, it helps you maneuver it. If you can turn the nose of the ship as well as just the tail end of the ship, now you can really, it's kind of like the ladder fire engine ladder truck where they got the guy in the back steering, only the bow thruster is like the guy up front steering. It helps move the front of the ship. So you can basically pull into a dock and just park that thing on a dime if you know what you're doing. So they had to do that. Then they had to rip out all of the, all the upholstery and furniture and shit, just flying these huge dumpsters of stuff off of the ship, because now cranes are able to, be pulling stuff, 40-foot container dumpsters, just pulling them out of there like crazy, man. And they're just flying through the sky like sand. So let's say the ship's all done now. We're ready to put it in the water. Okay, so they do the same thing. Now they start pumping water into the floating dry dock, so it starts sinking. Eventually, the ship is actually sitting back in the water again now, just like it was in the very beginning. They sink this floating dry dock, and then they open the back door of this, and then the divers go down. Now they open the back door of this container because there's no weight or resistance on it now. It's underwater, right? So they open it up and you just back the ship out of the floating dry dock. So like I said, because we're in the Columbia River now, we've got to turn the ship around because we're going to exit the Columbia River. And I don't know if you know, there's this thing called the bar at the end of the Columbia River. It's like a really tricky maritime navigation thing where sometimes where a river meets the ocean, you can get a really big bump in the water as you go in or out. It's usually more pronounced going out. Anyway, here we are. We're getting ready to take the ship out into the ocean now, and the captain kind of, I'd say he didn't really hit that as well as he could have. And the ship started to roll a good bit, hit it again, or, hit another wave, kind of okay, but not great. And the ship's still like rocking and rolling, stuff's flying all over the place. Now, there's no paying passengers on this ship now. There's just all of this crew, enough crew to run a cruise ship, right? Now you've got different people in there. You got people like me that are going to take care of the guests, but then you have other people that are actually licensed engineers that are going to run the ship, and they're handling all of the mechanical side of the ship. You got other people like me, like bartenders and spa attendants, whatever, dancers, performers. We're all on the ship. So now we got to take this thing on a shakedown cruise. So we sail it out of the Columbia River. We're going to sail it down to LA and make sure that it doesn't start leaking or nothing's going to go terribly wrong with it. And then we're going to go back to the Bay Area. We're going to go back to San Francisco, pick up a bunch of passengers, and then sail it to Hawaii. So everything goes pretty good on the sail down to LA. That just takes a few days. We get to LA, a couple days, I forget, 2 or 3 days. We get to LA and turn it around. I think we spent 1 or 2 nights in LA, in Long Beach at the harbor there. Come back to the Bay Area and sail under the Golden Gate Bridge, which was just fantastic. Everybody's out there, like, because this is kind of big news. Like I said, no cruise ship had ever been flagged with it reflagged with a U.S. flag in maritime history. This is the first time that's ever been done. So all of the crew is up on the deck so we can look up at the Golden Gate Bridge as we sail under it, which was just glorious. So we pull into the dock there, bring in all the passengers. Now, these are paying passengers, and they know they're going on the very first voyage of this ship. So it's kind of a big deal for all of us, right? So we load everybody up. Everybody gets their cabins. Everybody starts doing their thing now, and now we sail out under the Golden Gate Bridge, and now we all like report to our stations like we're on duty now because we got paying guests in there. So it takes 5 days to sail from San Francisco to Honolulu on something like the size of a cruise ship or a container ship. We're running as fast as it'll go 24/7, and 5 days later, we see the Big Island coming up over the horizon, and everybody's just out on deck screaming and yelling, and the cruise everything's working pretty good so far. We've got some issues with the bathrooms. We got some issues with the gray water from the showers or flooding every once in a while. Down in the crew area, everything up in the passenger area is working pretty seamlessly at this point. Now, like I said, Travels with Carl, it's going to ultimately be 52 episodes, 52 short stories, and 52 paintings. And, I've been letting everybody down because I've been a little bit slow on the actual paintings. So each story's got a painting. Then each painting will be made into both a limited edition print, 25 pieces, signed and numbered on archival everything. Excuse me. And then it'll also be on my website in an unlimited, unsigned, unnumbered, open edition. And what's the website? www.vangogh.ink. That's right. Good job. You guys are getting it. VanGogh.ink, like Van Gogh Incorporated, only instead of INC, it's INK like a printmaker. So it took me a little while to find this photograph. Okay, I stole this from the Honolulu Star, where this ship was christened in December of 2000. Okay, and I think that's right, December of 2000. It would hold 1,212 passengers. And so the reason I don't have a painting yet is, like you all know, I had a fire and lost everything I owned, except for what I had when I went to grad school. I took a truck full of stuff up to Oregon, and other than that, everything else I lost in a fire. It was bad. So I don't have any actual photographs of my own, but I'm going to find a better one. I might do this. I might paint this, do a painting from this photo. This ship is no longer with us. It was scrapped in 2018. After September 11th happened, well, I should back up because I should say that while I loved working on the ship, I love everything about sailing and being on any kind of seaworthy vessel. It's magnificent. We used to sail around the Big Island at night, and just big tubes of lava would be pouring right into the ocean. It's spectacular to see that from the water. And just seeing the islands, just cruising around the islands, and it's such a beautiful way to spend a week, because every time you take a different turn, you get different scenery, and you're sailing between these 8 islands. And so September 11th happened, and then I was already gone on to my next job, which I'm not going to tell you what that is, but I I was really hopeful that because it was a union ship and everything else, it was going to be run correctly and we weren't going to be treated like slaves. Okay, but once they started treating me like a slave, we pulled into Kauai one day. I did a couple tours. I don't even remember how many times I went around the Hawaiian Islands, but it was a week-long tour, and they got rid of all the people and reloaded all the people, and you did another week, and then get rid of all the people and load another 1,000 people on and do another week. And it's pretty good money for a job for a bill paying job, because you're not spending anything. Your room and board is all free, and you're making a lot of the money was cash. A lot of the tips was cash, and then you got a decent paycheck, like I said, because we were a union. So for the crew that had come from the Caribbean, they couldn't believe how much money they were making, because, like I said, they run all the other cruise ships. You don't even want to know how badly they treat the crew economically. Okay, they look like they're having a good time, and they're still making a lot of money considering the country that most of them came from. There were a lot of people from the Philippines, and the average income is a few dollars a day in the Philippines. Okay, just to put it into perspective. So those cats are all sending money home. In fact, some of the people that I work with that were from Hawaii had bought houses in the Philippines, and then because we had like 14 weeks off on and then 7 weeks off, and they would like fly back. They already had houses in the Philippines that they had bought, like with servants and security. And anyway, we pulled into Kauai one day, into just off of Kalapaki Beach, and I grabbed my shit. I'd already had it timed out. I knew I was going to get off on Kauai. I had my stuff already packed up. Told my cabin mates, because we were supposed to be 4 people to a cabin. We only had 3, and we created a dummy person that didn't really exist, just so we would only have the 3 of us in the cabin. And oh my God, they were such great roommates. We had so much fun. And the only thing we ever got in trouble for was laughing so hard and making so much noise, and it was so loud at night, because we were just like laughing hysterically and telling jokes all the time and joking about the other crew that was on there. So anyway, I jumped ship in Kauai, literally threw my shit over onto the beach and came down the gangplank and just said, "Fuck you, I'm out." And so that was it for me, man. And it's not too long after that, September 11th would happen, and the economy in Hawaii would tank, and the ship was actually what do you call that? Like repossessed by U.S. Marshals, because they couldn't pay the mortgage on the ship any longer, because they were making no money. Eventually, Holland America bought the ship back. Because they're like, we put all kinds of money into the ship, right? So they ended up losing it for a couple few years. Got the ship back, all renovated with a bow thruster in it, new engines and all kinds of shit. They poured all kinds of money into this because they were sure this was going to be a winner. And if September 11th hadn't happened, I think it probably would have been, because they'd already laid the keel for 2 ships that were going to be bigger than the Patriot. They were also going to be U.S. flagged, U.S. crewed, Coast Guard certified, all of that. And they eventually just let those contracts go too, because they couldn't, there was no money coming in. So what is Travels with Carl? Well, I just told you about one of the jobs I had. This is job number 32. And I'm going to have, each week I talk about one of my jobs to support myself as a lifelong artist. Okay, I have a master's degree in printmaking, a bachelor's degree in film and video, It's a BFA and an MFA. And so I talk about that. I talk about my life. So it's 52 jobs and told in a story that lasts 1 year, and it's from I was 12 to when I'm 68. So it's 56 years of time compressed into 1 year. Okay, and so that'll also be a book, 52, aka Travels with Carl. This is Travels with Carl. Carl's a 31-foot motorhome. He's parked over in his gated community right now because I'm building a greenhouse. I don't know if you can see it out there. There's one, there's the end with the doors in it, and then there's the two of the side units right there. And I got one more end to build, and then the roof, to put the roof on it real quick. And then these are the panels that go inside it. Oh shit! But I'll show you. See, it's kind of like this translucent stuff. Like you can kind of see through it, but it's not clear like glass, and it's a lot safer than glass. Check this out. These are the vents for the roof. You know, like there's 4 of these, so I can let hot air out if it's too hot inside, or close them up if it's wintertime. But I'm going to put that right out here on my deck so that I'm going to be able to have like a hummingbird atrium there. Plus I'm going to start plants and get back into growing some house plants and some garden plants and stuff. So that's it. That's Travels with Carl. Every in a year, well, in 20 more episodes, going to be able to complete every short story, because what I'm doing right now is right off the top of my head. There's no script for this at all. I know what job I'm going to talk about, and I just give it to you right there live, one take. These are going to take, then I do the painting. That's going to be a color plate in the book, and then the short story is going to be published. And the short stories are actually going to be written better, and they're going to be they're going to be proofread. I'm never going to spell rifle wrong again, because you know that you can spell a rifle with 2 F's or 1 F. Okay, one way means a rifle, a long gun, and the other way means like to rifle through things. Okay, don't ever make that mistake. Okay, but here, look at this. This one's called Gimme Shelter. It's just a shot away. This talks about gun and gang violence, okay, that goes with the war on drugs. I believe that all drugs should be legalized. Prohibition didn't work for alcohol. It only lasted for 14 years, and then they had to get rid of it. So they created Amendment 18, made alcohol illegal to make, sell, consume, or transport. And then they said, wow, that was a really fucking bad idea. And they created people like Al Capone, and they drove a huge wedge between law enforcement and human regular population. And then they also started, they were putting so many people in jail that they had to invent plea bargaining. So incarceration just took off like, people were, it was a fucking nightmare, okay? It's the only time in U.S. history and constitutional history that they wrote one amendment to get rid of another amendment. So the title of the book, Amendment 21-A, comes from just that thing. All we need to do now is amend the 21st Amendment to say that all mind-altering substances, not just alcohol. They made alcohol legal, and it was one of the worst mind-altering drugs out there. It's really bad for your body, your brain. It causes people to do some really bad, stupid shit. But what if changing one thing could change the world? This is that one thing. This ending the war on drugs, quote unquote, will be the single largest and most important change in the law in my lifetime. It will positively change the city you live in, the country you live in, and the world that we all live in. It's hard to even wrap your mind around the changes this will bring about until you read this book. I think about all the unnecessary pain and suffering this war brought to us all, and I'm just glad I was able to stop it. Just say no, stand with Van Gogh against illegal prohibition. So you can go right to Amazon, type in amendment, and then the number 21 dash and the letter A, and this will come right up, $20. Get yourself one. If it doesn't come up for some reason, maybe browser issues or whatever, just type my name in under author, Rich Van Gogh or Richard Van Gogh, and it'll come right up and you get yourself a copy. I tell you, it's a brilliant book, if I say so myself. Plug my book, plug my website, plug the 52 and the whole project, Travels with Carl, okay? I think it's a one-of-a-kind YouTube channel, okay? Check out some of the other episodes. You can watch them all. You can binge watch them all. They're 30 minutes each, roughly. I try and keep it right at 30 minutes, okay? Sometimes I go on and on about social political things, okay, which I'm going to try and not do that today, although we need to get out of Iran right away, okay? Because Pete Kegbreath is going to fucking draw us into a fucking giant catastrophic mistake, okay? We got to get Trump, Bondi, Hegseth, Noam, all of them right to prison, okay? Because they're all committing perjury, they're all pedophiles, and they're all rot bastards, okay? That's all I got to say now, man. Let's ride. You ready? Let's go. Let's ride, baby.
Surrounded by the beast, the birds and the breeze, his motor home in the woods where creativity sees. Sun will abode, colors come alive on canvas, he paints, pressing